a lot of girls were thirst posting about Gladiator, and I was one of them.
I want some dick, 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 dick. Now, nigga, then I'm leaving.
That's a perfect transition right there. So, our next movie that we're going to be doing, next and last review, is going to be for the film Gladiator 2. So, Gladiator 2 is the 24-year later sequel to the very first Gladiator film. And Ridley Scott is again coming back to direct this movie. Who directed this film there? Ridley Scott. 86 years old, Ridley Scott is still out there, still making movies, still directing there.
Yep.
So, what is happening in this film there? So, you have Paul Mescal there, who plays Lucius Aurelius there, Lucius Aurelius there, whose town was taken over by the Roman. You see the Roman Empire, who's doing what the Roman Empire does, done all the imperialism there, conquering all these other smaller countries. They're taking them over. He gets one of his countries gets taken over. He gets taken as a slave there, and eventually decided to fight as been chosen to fight as a gladiator in the games there in the Colosseum. And then he has one mission throughout this movie, is a mission of revenge, and that is to kill Pedro Pascal's character, who's General, I think it's Acacius, General Acacius, General Acacius there, because of what happened to his wife there. And yeah, he's destined to kind of take over there and to kill him. That's the only thing he has left in life. And then also you have a lot of other kind of political games going on behind the scenes. A lot of that's done by Denzel Washington's character. There are a lot of Game of Thrones type of stuff trying to take over for the vying for the throne of Rome, which is now being ruled by two twin emperors there. One is played by Joseph Quinn, and the other is played by Fred Hitchinger. Oh, people might know Fred Hitchinger. He was in White Lotus, I think is the thing he's big for. And then Joseph Quinn, he was in, of course, Stranger Things. He was Eddie in that, and he's going to be Johnny Storm in the upcoming Fantastic Four film.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts on Gladiator 2?
So I saw the first film when it came out 24 years ago when I was like 5 years old. So I definitely had to rewatch it again on, I think I watched it on Paramount Plus, and I'm glad I did for a refresher. This sequel does what some sequels do, and sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. It follows a lot of story beats, almost verbatim from the first movie. So the initial war of, you know, Rome taking over somewhere, and, you know, there's a general, and then someone is taken into custody. They start doing some low level gladiator stuff, and then they're taken to the big, you know, it's very similar story beats. What I thought was missing from this sequel was that Shakespearean drama that the first one had, of like the Marcus Aurelius, you know, not choosing his son to be his successor, but this general who he loves like a son. You know, just a lot of that father-son drama, this tension between the prince and the general, like, you know, it felt very dramatic in a Shakespearean way. This sequel, very similar to what I said about Moana 2 and other sequels, it went bigger in spectacle, obviously, with, you know, just the water, the sharks, and the monkeys. They definitely went bigger. These twin emperors are like heightened versions of Joaquin's emperor, who was, you know, immature and childish. I want to be loved, not feared, but they don't love me, so I guess I'll take fear. You know, they're very over the top and just immature and just, you know, lustful. I thought it was very silly about the way people were complaining about Denzel Washington's accent and his voice. People in ancient Rome didn't have British accents. I hope people know that.
Yes.
I hope people know that, you know, Caesar didn't talk like this. It was ancient Rome. None of
Craig
them.
Ferguson literally had a whole like comedy like monologue about this in one of his stand-ups, like, you know, British sounding Romans. He's like, that's not what they sounded like.
Yeah. My favorite example is also Drew Barrymore, Ever After, that Cinderella movie. That's 17th century France. They have British accents. They always do that with these period piece movies. No matter where they are in Europe, they have a British accent because it's
In
easy.
Ridley Scott's movie Napoleon, everybody people just talked in their regular accent,
Like,
and that's supposed to be in France. But yeah,
exactly. So it's odd that they want. It's really odd that they want to point at Denzel and say, "Oh, you ruined the movie. This isn't accurate, historically accurate. This is a film from Hollywood for entertainment. None of this has to be historically accurate. Were you entertained?
no. Are you entertained?
Are you entertained?
I guess that's the question there.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris just froze there. I guess he left
Oh
over the
no.
question. Yeah. So, Kristina, were you entertained by Gladiator 2?
I have a love-hate relationship with Ridley Scott because I feel like he just keeps pumping these movies and really doesn't care about, quality, quantity and all that. Like his brother had a lot of better, God rest his soul. His brother, who's a director, had a much better track record, in my opinion, and he didn't direct as much films as Ridley did. So I watched the original. I did rewatch the original recently just to, pick up on refresh my memory. As someone who's a woman, I have to say that this was me the entire time. Like
I did see that
like,
TikTok there.
I know, dick. Like I was like, whoa, man, alert everywhere. But I do feel like Ridley Scott is kind of like his worst enemy because he just feels like he can just be very sloppy and like push stuff out and not consider like what made like his or like his the prequels or like the original films work, in my opinion. But this works because of the cast, I think, because you got Pedro Pascal looking fine, Paul Mescal, Joseph Quint, and of course Samuel L. Jackson, who a lot, and this is and to go off of Chris, it was racism really for the critique about his accent. They're like, he sounds ghetto, he doesn't sound like he's whatever, and I'm like, you're only attacking the black man in this movie. Like, you're not going after Pedro, you're not going after Joseph Quinn, you're not going after Paul Mescal. I'm like, you're attacking the one black lead in this movie, and you're going to talk shit about his accent. Like, this is the same guy who's done like what, Hamlet?
They did Macbeth.
Macbeth, like he's done
Lear.
like Shakespeare, before, and it's Samuel Jackson. He could do whatever fuck he wants, in my opinion. He should have.
You mean Denzel Washington? You mean?
I mean, yeah, whatever. I always get them mixed up because they both just don't give a crap about like awards, and like they're both like opinionated when it comes to Hollywood, and I love that. But I feel like the Shakespearean aspect was kind of missing from the story. Like, I agree about that. But I do feel like this movie could have done a little bit better if they just did the Glick type of situation. I mean, mostly people just made up the Glick thing because they're like, these are two very different movies that are coming out. We're gonna go see Wicked and then Gladiator 2. I feel like the studios, especially like for Ridley Scott, Gladiator 2, they could have benefited from the Glick thing. But I do know their whole like promo tour was just about thirsting over the guys, and I'm cool with that. I'm fine with that. That's cool. We need to objectify men more. No offense, but as we talked about with The Substance, the male gaze was very obvious in The Substance, but we're now seeing more directors and writers and actors be like, what about the female gaze? Like, why can't we, why can't women get horny too and stuff like that? So I felt like a lot more women came to see the Gladiator because they know Pedro and Joseph and Paul. So it just it works where it works, and where it doesn't, it could have just been just maybe Ridley Scott's like his isms that some of us are just like not fond of about him, because he still thinks he's like a man of like a higher power of director. But I'm like, you've come out with less bangers and more like questionable choices, and especially your recent years, because he doesn't take his sweet time like a Martin Scorsese does when it comes to his filmography.
Yeah, I mean, mentioning his age, I mean, it's kind of like him and guys like him and Martin Scorsese and Clint Eastwood and a lot of these guys kind of upper, in their 70s, 80s. I mean, Clint Eastwood is in his 90s,
Yeah.
Who are still kind of out there making movies. It's inspirational, I think, that they're still doing it, still going through all that kind of effort there to come out with these movies. And he has had a steady production of films there in the recent few years. There before this, so he mentioned Napoleon, which came out last year,
Yeah.
which I thought the movie was all right. I mean, I think the battle sequences were good,
Yeah.
and I think again you see that with Gladiator 2, a lot of the really epic kind of battle sequences that happen here. And to Chris's point, I think a lot of it's more spectacle over actual the story itself. And I'm not
Yep.
even that big on the first Gladiator film. I think it's okay. I know the
Yeah.
first Gladiator film hugely successful. I mean, won Best Picture. It was very successful box office wise
Yeah.
there. So
I
really,
wonder if it
really
was a Miramax studio film.
Miramax
Probably,
studio.
probably was. It probably was Harvey Weinstein bullying everyone to, you know, for
Yeah.
all the awards because that was what he was notoriously known for. Because I just like Gladiator for Best Picture, like
Yeah.
reminds me of
Uh,
Crash.
Yeah, and it did super well there. And Gladiator 2 is doing, it's doing good. It's got 400 million so far. I mean, the budget on it is pretty big though. The budget on it is like 200 million plus, so it needs to
Yeah.
do really, really well there to kind of make some of that back. So yeah, when it comes to kind of the story, people are also saying it's kind of very similar to something like Force Awakens, where it's kind of like doing a soft reboot almost of the same story you always see
Yeah.
before, with just kind of new younger faces there that you have. How do you feel about Paul Mescal in this movie? Because a lot of people are saying he's kind of a not that interesting in this as Lucius. I mean, his character arc you can see kind of going, and it's not that really interesting. What kind of your thoughts
Yeah,
there?
I agree with that because it literally could have like it's like they could have it's like he was almost just like a filler character. Like they're like we got we're gonna cast a young hot looking guy, give him as the lead, but like not sure what to do with him. And I hate when they do that in films. Like they'll cast people and they just don't know what to do. And then again, that's probably a screenwriting issue in my opinion with like Ridley Scott, but I feel like they could have fleshed out the character more. I feel like the acting, I'm not really seeing much praise for like the acting. It's more of like the spectacle of it. But I feel like if they were to have given these characters more fleshed out stories and stuff to do besides, fighting, I feel like, these could be award worthy nominations, if you will, like, like actors or even like cinematography even.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, if I had to say the best actor in this film, I think Denzel Washington. I mean, steals every scene he's in
Yeah.
by far. Every time, I mean, it's really the movie just jumps up a notch as far as entertainment goes when he's on screen and when he's doing
Yeah.
something. Yeah, Chris, you cut off there. Yeah, I guess your internet was not entertained there by your opinions. So yeah, we were talking about just the performances in the movie. Paul Mescal, we felt like some people were saying he was kind of lacking. I kind of felt a little bit of too as being the lead of this film, and we also brought up your points of. You also mentioned this in one of your reactions of Gladiator 2 that it kind of feels like a soft kind of reboot, like almost like Force Awakens in a way. There. So yeah, I just want to pass it to you and get your thoughts there.
Yeah, very similar to The Force Awakens and Moana 2, but not done as well. Oh no, I can't say that. I can't say that because it didn't really bother me because sequels do that. It did follow almost verbatim story beats, but Paul Mescal, I know he's relatively new and he's a rising star in Hollywood. This is the first thing I've seen him in. I haven't seen what was
All
that
of
movie?
Us Strangers.
I haven't seen All of Us Strangers.
I hear that's really good.
I heard it's
Yeah.
really good, like critically acclaimed, and I really need to see it.
I hear
So this,
After Sun is really good too. After Sun.
Yeah,
yeah,
I know a few people are like, who the hell's this guy? I'm like, he's literally a rising star in Hollywood. He's gonna be like, he's gonna have it. He's like the next big thing, like within like this new generation of young, hot Hollywood talent that like the
exactly.
Timothée Chalamet, Florence Pugh, Anya Taylor Joy, and Jacob Elordi class.
Yeah, so like this is I'm on Letterboxd, so like it's like I haven't seen.
Ah.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. This is the first thing I've seen him in, and I thought he had gravitas. I thought he had presence. I thought he was great on screen. I thought he was a good job. I thought he did a good job as the lead, anchoring the story. Denzel Washington definitely is a scene stealer. Every time he's on screen, he was just the best person on screen. I liked how the trailer tricked me. I thought Pedro Pascal's general was going to be loyal to Rome and be an actual enemy. Sorry, be someone who Lucius would rightfully want vengeance against. But we, in the movie, how it turns out, we learn it's the opposite, and he's very similar to Marcus Aurelius. To Maximus, and he's loyal to Maximus and his ideals. And just like in the first one, he's planning a coup that goes wrong. Like, you know, it's very similar to the first one, like how everything happens, but it's just bigger. My issue is the third act, the way characters weren't allowed to. I know it's like wartime, but like characters weren't allowed to sit and breathe in a moment. It felt like some things were missing from Act 3, and I wonder if that something was the scenes that were cut out of May Calloway from Moon Knight,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
she reportedly had a prominent role in this movie, but because of her support of Palestine, she was completely cut and removed. So when Lucius, you know, when his mom, you know, gets hit, it like he doesn't get a chance to live in that moment. It like cuts to him like on horseback, like, you know, like there were just certain moments that felt really rushed. And
Yeah.
I wonder if that was why.
Yeah, and you know, really, Scott is no stranger to having like, you know, long movies too. And I mean, Pedro Pascal is also for Palestine. He comes from a very political Latin America background, so it's like he was showing, you know, he was always posting photos of with her on set to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, she was in this film. She
Yeah.
deserves to be included, you know. And I don't know if that's his way of saying stuff, because his whole thing is very subtle. Like he
He's very
doesn't like,
smart. Yes,
yeah,
I love Pedro.
yeah.
He's definitely an ally and an advocate.
Yeah, I mean, his sister's trans, and people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
he's very much ride or die for his sister." And I love that, but like, it goes to show that if you are a woman in Hollywood without enough clout and you're pro Palestine, your career is definitely challenged and on the line. Like we see with Melissa Barrera, Pedro Pascal has enough clout in Hollywood to actually be able to get away with being pro Palestine and pro trans and, you know, very much radical. In his political views, because you know people conservatives at Hollywood like we have to be silent. I'm like, no, I'm like, Pedro Pascal doesn't go waving a pride flag everywhere he goes. He knows when to speak. He keeps it very subtle, very simple, and that's how actors in Hollywood who are political should handle it, in my opinion. Like they're not, you know, making it their entire personality. They know what the limits are. And it's just so funny to me when conservatives like, we're not allowed to speak in liberal Hollywood. I'm like, yeah, you are. It's just no one agrees with you, and people will find you to be very annoying.
yeah, yeah. Like Pedro, he brings his sister to a lot of Red Carpet events.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need to do. Just show up,
Yeah.
and just
Mm-hmm.
you know, like you said, show, don't tell. You don't have to blurt out where you stand. Just show where you stand.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, she's so gorgeous.
Beautiful picture. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Pedro's the best. I'm so glad that he's the Mandalorian. You know. Cool.
Yeah.
And Reed Richards.
Yes.
Yes.
That is
good
my
casting
Reed,
right there.
that is my Reed Richards.
Yeah. We actually might get a good Fantastic Four movie for once.
Oh.
We haven't got one yet, so
I know.
yeah.
Yeah. So I do. So I do like, you know, the spectacle of the movie. I mean, they do some crazy shit. I mean, you want to, again, this is a box office Hollywood movie, right? So
Entertainment.
you know, the stuff where they're fighting on top of sharks, and it's like, this is, you know, this is some goddamn Running Man type shit. Or
It's
whatever,
like, what's
you know?
the plot again?
Yeah, it's like what's happening right now? Like, sure, I guess let's go with it. You know, but okay. So you got to kind of just go with that, and such the similarities to the first movie. You know, of a lot of stuff that happens there. That's also something just kind of, I guess, either you're gonna like that or just kind of ignore it. Given the talent of this cast there, and given kind of what they're going through there. Again, like I said, I mean, I think if you had to point to one superstar of this, I think Denzel Washington is that. Paul Mescal, I think he was solid in the leading role there. And definitely his physicality, you know, was really good in this. It reminded me of like James McAvoy in that movie Speak No Evil. I don't know if he also went to a like weightlifting training expert, because that's what
Oh,
James
he always
McAvoy.
transforms his body for his roles. It's unbelievable. I'm like,
Yeah. So because
he
like you see
almost
like in his,
died.
yeah, like in his traps and his shoulders and everything are so huge and big in this, so that really helps a lot of the physicality of the role, a lot there. Yeah. So you think the weakest part of this movie is just that it's just basically the first movie over again, and that's kind of the weakest thing there for it? If you had to point out something there.
I think the weakest. Well, no, I didn't mind that. It follows story beats because, you know, it made it easier to follow. It's also, again, itself. Gladiator is also a long movie. Like if you did the Glit double feature, you're at the movies probably all day. Very similar to Barbenheimer.
Mhm.
Oppenheimer's 3 hours long, Barbie's 2 hours. Like you're there all day. Yeah, for me, it's just the third act. It felt not a little choppy. The characters weren't allowed to sit and breathe and live in moments. So that's my biggest critique.
What about you, Christine?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. It seemed like there was definitely something missing with the third act, and it just seemed like the ending was almost like ambiguous at best.
Mm.
It's like it makes like, is there gonna be a Gladiator 3 when Ridley Scott's like, I don't know, 101? Like what's gonna happen?
So Chris, final thoughts and rating for Gladiator 2.
I'm pretty sure I saw on Instagram they're already working on a script, or they have a script for a third movie. I think Ridley Scott wants to do a third movie. I also saw on Twitter today someone was calling him a hack because of this movie and the Last Duel, Napoleon. Like his last few movies haven't been the same Ridley Scott that we knew, decades ago.
Yeah.
I still admire and love Ridley Scott because he directed Blade Runner. That's my favorite film of all time.
Mm.
But this sequel is beautiful. I enjoyed Gladiator 2 for what it was. Denzel killed it. Pedro killed it. Paul, they all killed it. It does fall apart a little bit for me in the third act. So it's not cinema. It's not peak.
Tune in.
Tune in. Yeah, tune in.
Okay. What about you, Christina? Final thoughts, rating for
Yeah, I
Gladiator?
would definitely give this a tune in. I feel like it could have been better. They could have made room for more scenes, especially during the third act, to kind of like tie everything in together and give it a clean ending. But I guess now that we know there's probably gonna be a third movie, maybe the ending makes more sense. The acting is really good. I thought, the guys definitely had fun filming this movie, as you could tell from the press junket, and they do all have really good chemistry. I still see Joseph Quinn as Eddie though from Stranger Things, so it's kind of hard for me to see him, play this role. But I definitely recommend tuning in. If you're someone who's like, I don't want to see it in the theater. If you want to see it when you're streaming, that's fine. But I feel like these types of movies should be seen in the theater in like IMAX or whatever the hell. Like, come on, like these are if the films are meant to be a spectacle, you gotta pay the ticket price and sneak in a snack or two and just enjoy and be as mesmerized as I was seeing all these handsome men just fighting and rolling around the dirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I would also. I think it's just a solid tune in. I don't think it's spectacular. I don't think it's awful there. Again, I'm not someone. I don't know if you really do love the first one. This is a like you just think this is such a letdown. If you really do love the first one, I just think the first one's okay for me. So, yeah, I think this is also just okay. I don't think it has the gravitas that the first one has, or the drama, the elements that the first one has, as Chris mentioned there. But it has a lot of fun in the spectacle, as we keep mentioning there as well. But the whole kind of premise of him out for revenge and the vengeance and everything like that, it's like, but that's Pedro Pascal. He cool. You know what I mean? Like even in this movie, it's like he's a cool guy, just a cool, chill guy. Like it's like you know what I mean? Really
Mhm.
you want to kill him? It's like, it just seems like it's a big misunderstanding there a little bit. Um, so that motivation doesn't it's not as like you're really rooting for him to kill him as much as I think in the first one there with like Joaquin Phoenix's character. And the two twin tyrant emperors there, they made for some decent moments. And then I think their fate, what happens to them, is a good payoff. Denzel Washington doing his kind of meddling behind the scenes, his little finger stuff, I thought was good in it. So yeah, it's just a fine, solid tune in. Nothing too spectacular, nothing too great there. Out of the two, movies, I would say Wicked is the better film at what it's trying to do. I think Wicked is the better movie at what it's trying to sell. So yeah, 3 tune ins all around for Gladiator